Okay guys, so we're gonna start chapter 7.5. So, okay, geometric mean. We all know that the formula for geometric mean is x squared equals AB. So this x squared is the geometric mean. So do we know the geometric mean? No. And we know that A and B are this and that. So let's plug that in. Let's find our geometric mean, which is x. So x squared equals A, which is 7 times 28. Let's get the calculator. We're gonna need to use a calculator a few times, which is fine. You guys have access to your calculator on your MyMathLab. So 7 times 28 is 196. Is 196. Now, before we even start doing this and finding like the factors that give you that, let's see if 196 is a perfect square. It is, it's 14. So x equals, technically it equals plus and negative 14, but we know that geometric mean is a length, and we know that there can't be negative lengths, so the answer is just 14. Okay, so next one, same thing, right? Just we have fractions, and yeah, fractions can be scary, I guess, but we're still gonna do it. Geometric mean, we know that it's AB. So x squared equals 7 over 5 times 140 over 1. The reason I do it like this is because if I'm working with a fraction, I'm gonna want to multiply by another fraction in quotation marks, right? This makes it a fraction, right? This one under it. So here we know that when we multiply things together, we can cross simplify. So the greatest common factor between 5 and 140 is 5, so this is going to turn into 1, and this is going to turn into 140 divided by 5 is 28. So now what's 7 times 28 is 196. Oh wow, guys, it's just a coincidence that it's the same answer as the other one. Just a coincidence, but the steps are still the same. Okay, cool. Okay, so now next one. Now this is when it gets a little more interesting, right? Our geometric mean is still x squared equals AB. But now our A and B is gonna be changing, right? So this is very important. When your geometric mean is the altitude, right? This x right here, the altitude, your A and B are the separate segments of your hypotenuse, right? Look, this is the hypotenuse right here. So this is your altitude. This is your hypotenuse. Your geometric mean, when your geometric mean is on the altitude, is your separate segments of your hypotenuse. Okay? So it's going to be x squared. This x goes right onto there. So it's going to be x squared equals 6 times 4. X squared equals 24. Square root. This, I know 24 is not a perfect square, so let's break it down. So I have 4 times 8, 6 and 24, 6, 12, 18, 24, 6. And now I know square root of 4 is 2, and I know the square root of 6 can't be simplified anymore. So it's just 2 square root 6. Now the way to do it, if you wanted to do it the longer way, is square root of 24. You can break it down to 4 and 6. This 4 can be dropped down. You keep finding until you get the prime factors. So 2, 2, 2, and 3, these are your prime factors. So let's highlight them. Prime factor, prime factor, prime factor, prime factor. Okay, so now we know that the index number is 2. So if the index number is 2, that means 2 guys can come out for the price of 1. So this guy and this guy will come out, and it'll be a what? Just 1, 2. Now, is there another 2? No. So this guy can't come out. Is there another 3? No. So they can't come out. So now let's turn this. So this will technically be square root of 2 times square root of 3, which is just what? 6. Which is the same answer we just received, right? So let's go here. Okay. Okay, so let's solve for x and y. So let's solve for x first, because we should already know well, the geometric mean is always x squared equals AB. Now, when your geometric mean is on your altitude right here, your geometric mean is going to still be x, and now your A and B are what? The separate segments of your hypotenuse. So this 12 and this little piece here. What's this little piece? Well, if the whole thing here is 24, if the entire hypotenuse is 24 and this little piece is 12, isn't this just going to be 24 minus 12? Yeah. So we can put right here 12. So now what do I got to do? X squared equals 12 times 12, because remember, when your geometric mean is on the altitude, your A and B are the separate segments of your hypotenuse. X squared equals 144, and we know the square root of 144 is 12. Okay, so my x should be 12, and it is. So now let's do in red, let's find my y. Now, when your geometric mean is on a leg, your A and B now will be your A or your B. So one of them, your A or your B, will be the entire hypotenuse, the entire length of the hypotenuse, and your B, let's say we chose our A to be the entire hypotenuse, then our B would be the segment of the hypotenuse. So this one or this one. Which one? It's the one that's actually connecting to that leg. So which segment is connecting to this leg? This one or this one? It's obviously this one. Okay, so let's do in red. Now it's going to be y squared, because this y needs to go onto this geometric mean right here. Okay, so y squared equals, what is it? The whole hypotenuse, 24, times the segments that is actually connecting to the leg, so that's 12. Y squared equals, what's 24 times 12? 24 times 12 is 288. So square root. I know 288, is it a perfect square? I don't believe so. Nope, so that means we're gonna have to break it down. So we can break this down to square root of 4 times square root of 72. Okay. Okay, sorry guys. Now this square root of 72, we can break it down even more. What's 72 divided by 4 is 18, so square root of 4 times square root of 18. The square root of 18 can be square root of 2 times square root of 9. And now I have this square, this, and this square. All of these are perfect squares, so I can already take them out. So now what is the square root of 4? 2. What's the square root of 4? 2. What's the square root of 9? 3. And what's left? The square root of 2. So now what's 2 times 2 times 3? That is 12 square root of 2. There we go. Okay? So now, once again, find the value of x. Okay, so now this is when it gets a little bit harder, because I don't have an altitude here, but I do have a leg, right? So my geometric mean is x squared equals AB. Now, what is my x? My x can either be my altitude, but it's not, right? My geometric mean is not on the altitude. So what is the other one? What is the other value that I possibly have? The leg. So now, instead of this being an x, or instead of it being a y like we've been doing it, it could just be an expression, this x plus 10. So this x plus 10 is going to go right onto here. So now it's going to be x Wait, let's do it down there. X plus 10 to the second equals, now, when my geometric mean is on the leg, what are my A and B? One is the entire hypotenuse, which is gonna be 21 plus X, right? Because 21 plus X, this whole length. And what is the other segment? What's B in this case? If this entire hypotenuse is our A, what's our B? It's the segment of the hypotenuse that is actually touching this leg. And which part is that? This X. So, X. Now, okay guys, the way to do this problem, you can do this in a much faster way. You can do it X plus 10, X plus 10, X squared, plus 10X, plus 10X, plus 100, X squared plus combined like terms, 20X plus 100, and there's your answer. There's another way to do it that I want you guys to learn how to do. Whenever you're evaluating an expression to the power of 2, you're gonna do, what's X squared? X squared. What is 10 squared? 100. Now the last one is this. What is X? What is X times 10? That's 10X. Now, what is 10X times 2? You're multiplying by 2. So the middle term right here is your first term times your second term times the number 2. So what's X times 10? 10X times 2 is 20X, positive 20X. There you go. And now let's distribute this. So 21X and this plus X squared. Now, I'm going to subtract everything to one side, right? So actually not even, because won't this X squared and this X squared get canceled out? Look, minus X squared, cancel out, cancel out. Now, I'm gonna subtract this, minus 20X, minus 20X. So now, I'm taking this out, so now I have my constant and my variable on different sides of the equation. That's exactly what we want. So now, what is 21X minus 20X? Well, that's just X. So X equals 100. And my X is 100. Okay? So, it's gonna be much of the same in this one, guys. So now, I have, which geometric mean do I have? My altitude. So, once again, what's the equation for your geometric mean? X squared equals AB. So, what's my geometric mean? X plus 10 now, guys. It's the same thing. Instead of it being an X, and we just put in an X, and then we get X squared, blah, 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 it's just an expression. All we've been doing is plugging in whatever the value for the altitude or whatever the value for a leg, let's say this is y minus 1, we're just plugging in these values of the altitude or the leg right into this variable. So this x plus 2, x plus 2, so we're gonna put that in right there. So, oh, x plus 12 squared equals, now, since my altitude is the geometric mean, what's gonna be my A and B is gonna be the separate segments of my hypotenuse. So 48 times x, which is just 48x. Let's evaluate. Remember, we already learned this. X squared plus 144. Now what's x times 12 times 2? That's 24x plus 24x because of this plus right here. So, because guys, remember, this is x times positive 12. And positive 12 times 2 is positive 24x equals 48x. So now, this is a case where I'm not going to be able to cancel out this x squared. So I'm going to have to work with that x squared. I also can't cancel out this x and this x. So that means I'm going to have something x squared plus something x plus a constant, which is what? Your quadratic formula. If it looks like this, then you know you're going to have to use your quadratic formula. And what's the last most important step of your quadratic formula? It needs to equal what? It needs to equal 0. 0. So that means we need to get this 48x out of here so that this side, so at least one side of the equation can equal 0. Can equal 0. Okay? So let's subtract 48x. Subtract 48x. So now we're going to have x squared minus, I think 24x. Yep. Plus 144 equals 0. So now we got to do the rainbow method, right? So what is 1, because that's the coefficient of this x squared, right? 1 times positive 144, well, that's just 144. So now I have to find out what two numbers multiply to give me positive 144 and add together to give me negative 24. So let's figure that out. I know 144 is divisible by 12 and 12. But 12 plus 12 is 24, not negative 24. So how can I change that? I can do negative 12 and negative 12. So now, what is negative 12 plus negative 12? Well, that's negative 24. And what is negative 12 times negative 12? Positive 144. So we know those are the correct two answers. So we're going to have x minus 12, x minus 12 equals 0. And now we got to set this equal to 0 and this equal to 0. So what is x minus 12 equals 0 and x minus 12 equals 0? It's the same thing, right? So we really only need to solve for one of them. So we're going to add 12, add 12. So my x is equal to 12. And what's my x? Is 12. Okay? Good. Now, last one. Okay. To estimate the height of a stone figure, an observer holds a stone, holds a small square, okay. Her eye level is at 187. She is 4.20 meters from the figure. What is the height? Okay. What is the height of the figure to the nearest hundredth of a meter? So they want this entire length, all of this, okay? So in order to figure out all of this, we're first gonna have to find what? Well, what is this length right here? This segment right here. So we're gonna give that an x. So I know I'm gonna need to use geometric mean because I have a right triangle by this with an altitude coming out of that right angle. That's the key to know you're gonna have to use geometric mean. So we're gonna have x squared equals AB. Where's my geometric mean? It's on the altitude. So I'm gonna do 4.2 squared equals AB. What are my A and B? My A and B, because the geometric mean is on an altitude, my A and B are gonna be the separate segments of my hypotenuse. So it's gonna be 1.89 times x. So now what is 4.2 times 4.2? 17. Wait, am I doing something wrong? Nope. Okay, 19.64 equals 1.89x. Now to find my x, I'm going to divide by 1.89, divide by 1.89. So my x should be 1.89. My x should be 9.33 repeating. So now this is .33 repeating, but that's not my final answer. Remember, they wanted the entire length to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so what is 9.33 plus 1.89? That is 11.22333, but they wanted it to the nearest hundredths, and we know that this place is the 10th and this place is the 100th, so it's going to be 11.22. So 11.22.